allowed.
Every lawyer who listens to your analysis is led directly to another law, which is what I told you about, the Electronic Communications Act. Whether your argument here is about the same, because can you put 76 on? We already prepared it. 76 Electronic Communications Act. And then let's show to our viewers. The provisions are very similar. You know, we spoke about it. Now, Samson is writing back and says that I should ask you what you think about 76. Whether it is not the same as 208, really. Yes. Is that it? Okay. A person who, by means of electronic communication service, knowingly sends a communication which is false or misleading and liable to prejudice the efficiency of life-saving service. Okay, this is a bit more specific. Or to endanger the safety of any person. Ship, interesting, aircraft, vessel, or vehicle commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not more than 3,000 penalty units. Okay, a person who, by means of electronic, so text, everything, Facebook, all that, knowingly sends a communication which is false. It has to be false. First, it has to be false.
False or misleading.
Or it has to be misleading. So if it is true, well, there's no problem. And it's likely to prejudice the efficiency of life saving. Okay, what do you say about this, though? That's really the question.
Yes, I mean, we've talked about this. I think that Electronics Communication Act 775, is a specialized act. If you look at Section 1, it tells you, if you had it here, you could have put it up, but it tells you the application of it. This particular act is meant to protect signals and interference of signals. So let's go back to the provision, and you notice that it's a very specific act for a particular operation. So let's go back to that act.
Can you put 76 again? Let's
listen, viewers a bit.
There it is.
So it says that by means of electronic communication service, knowingly, an electronic communication service has been defined in the act.
Okay.
If you go there to show you what electronic communication service is, knowingly sends a communication which is false or misleading and likely to prejudice the efficiency of life-saving service, one, or to endanger the safety of any person, ship, aircraft, vessel, or vehicle. Now, in law, when you are doing an interpretation, we say that certain words take their content and form from the preceding words. So, which odd one do you see among the words there? The only odd one you see is any person. But you see life-saving service. You see ship. You see aircraft. You see vessel, and you see vehicle. They are all deriving their color from the same content. So this law is particularly for emergency services. So for instance, if there's an aircraft landing, and you try to send a false signal to the aircraft, that is what this is talking about.
No, it says any person.
Yes, that's why I said that you cannot take the person out of vacuum. In law, in the interpretation, you call something nuisset a sources, that words derive their color and content from the words within which it is formed. So you see the odd word there is any person, and that any person cannot be interpreted out of context. It is referring to these particular services. So it is referring to emergency services. Yes.
Fire service people and all that. That's what you're saying? Any person should not be understood.
So any person would mean that if you try to send a false signal, that can endanger these services. That's why I'm giving an example of, say, an aircraft is about to land, and even if you are in it and you're able to send a false signal, that endangers the aircraft from landing. Or say an ambulance, you send a signal that endangers the provision of that service. Then you are committing an offense here. But this particular
I'm not convinced. Let's please put some 6 on
yes,
it. Let me try and understand.
It is not very difficult.
A person who, by means of electronic communication service.
So you need to go for the electronic communication service. If you don't go to section...
I get it. So electronic communication service here includes radio and television.
Yes, wire.
Great. Okay.
Wire, radio, electromagnetic wave.
Okay, so
you have to go there, then you can
So it includes radio broadcasting.
Yes, because the Electronic Communication Act is for radio broadcasting, is for service providers like Tigo, MTN, Airtel.
So the point you are making here,
the point I'm making here is that this particular law is specific.
No, I like that.
This particular law is specific.
But let's convince ourselves. So electronic communication service includes content broadcasting. Does it?
Exactly.
Content, not technical broadcasting. Because as we are sitting on
content
TV now, we are broadcasting content to people who are watching us. But we are also
the reason
broadcasting
why we
signals.
are struggling is that if we can get the definition for electronic communication.
Oh, no, that one we might not get now. But let's move on. So we want to understand what electronic communication. I think we get that. Okay. Now it says, knowingly, that person knowingly sends a communication. That's okay. I'm beginning to get convinced.
Which is false or misleading.
No, the way they use it
which is
a
false,
communication.
Yes, which is false or misleading and likely. Paul, you don't have to just take it. So, like you said, it must be false or misleading, but not just that. It should be likely to prejudice the efficiency of life-saving service. One.
That's clear. That's clear.
That is why during the COVID. That is why during the COVID.
It is towards life-saving service that this prohibition is directed.
That is one. Or if it's going to endanger the safety of an aircraft, the safety of a person, even in an aircraft, a person in a vessel, a person in a vehicle.
Oh, that's how you want us to understand any person.
Yes, I'm saying that we cannot just take it out of vacuum. That is why during the COVID era, that's why during the COVID era, this notice was sent around, because around that time we are just. I said COVID era because we are still in COVID, but it was very fresh. And that if you were to send any misleading information which can endanger the delivery of such service to people who needed it, then you are going to cause, how do you call it, an offense under this particular act. So I'm saying that this particular act is specific. It is not just here and there. So sometimes when we have heard that people say that they are going to even use this particular act to even go against pastors who prophesy, how on earth can you use Section 76?
I'm getting convinced by you. Let's put
how
it on again
so
that people who are not getting convinced, let me tell them
prophecy.
why I'm getting convinced. Sammy, this is very scholarly. Thank you. Can you put it on again?
But you don't need to be convinced because lawyers usually don't agree.
Let's go.
So
but I'm getting convinced now. Let's go ahead. It says a person, that's anybody, who by means of electronic communication, the law is limiting the means within the prohibition. So electronic communication. So if I go and stand at Kwame Nkrumah circle and I say something that causes fear and panic, this law cannot catch me. That's the point I'm making, lawyer.
That's the point I'm making.
Okay, so a law that is immediately begins to limit the platform of communication, I would agree with Sammy that must be seen as a specific law. But let's move on. It says a person who by means of electronic communication service knowingly sends a communication, and I like the way they put it, a communication. They didn't say knowingly says something or makes a publication. He sends a communication which is false or misleading and is likely to prejudice the efficiency of life-saving service. That's very direct. Or to endanger the safety of any person. This is where I'm not agreeing. It says, we should understand any person to mean a person in ship, aircraft, vessel. That might be true.
Paul, okay. In interpretation, words take their form and color from preceding words. You cannot take any person out of it.
I agree with that.
Now, look at this. If you go to section 101 of Act 775, the one we just read, it defines electronic communications to means any communication through the use of wire. You know, wire. For instance,
cable.
Say cable, wire, radio optical, or electromagnetic transmission emission, or receiving system, or any part of these. Then it defines electronic communication service includes a service providing electronic communications, a closed user group service, a private electronic communication service, a public electronic communication service, a radio communication service, and a value-added service.
That doesn't include content broadcasting, which makes your point stronger.
It's not that it makes my point stronger.
It doesn't include content broadcasting.
It's very important that when laws are passed, we read the memorandum and the Hansa.
No, I like this.
And the Hansa, because it brings clarity to it. I'm just saying that the Electronic Communications Act, Section 70 says on publication of false news, is not of a general application. It's for disruption of signals and interference of signals. And this particular act was meant purposely so that if you do any of those things that endanger life-saving service or endanger an aircraft or a vehicle that is being used for all these activities, and it is likely to cause what I call an accident, or is likely to bring trouble, then you are committing an offense. You cannot just be using this and say that, for instance, if somebody prophesies, then I'm going to arrest the person and then prosecute the person under Section 76. It won't work. My argument is that it won't work.
There's a 137 in 29 that you can catch pastors.
Yes, there's 137 that you can catch pastors, but I'm saying that you can only catch a pastor. First of all, let's make it clear. There is no law in Ghana against prophesying. I don't want us to go into the realm of spirituality or not. There's no law in Ghana against prophesying. However, if you prophesy and police can prove that your prophecy was false and that it caused fear and alarm, then you are in trouble. So for instance, you prophesy and you say that the president is going to be killed on the 12th of November. And on the 12th of November, the president is not killed. Now, when you say the president is going to be killed, instantly it becomes a national security matter because you are talking about the first gentleman of the land. So in that sense, this Section 208 may be applicable. Maybe the burden will be the police first establishing. But usually, if the prophecy is date bound, then the police can easily say that it did not come to pass. Because if you said 8th November, and after 8th November nothing happened, then they can say it's
if you say sometime in November, can they catch you in December?
If they say, of course, there is no limitation to criminal offense. If you committed something like 3 years ago, we can still bring it
I'm
up.
talking about if he prophesies 10th November, then on 11th November we know prophecy has failed.
Yes.
If he says sometime in November,
then
by December prophecy has failed.
Of course, it has failed because then we are. But
if he says
but,
he
but
prayed,
again,
if the prophet says
how about
he
if he
prayed,
says,
he prayed and intervened, and that's why it didn't happen. What do you do?
But how about if I was listening to the pastor involved in the Shatta Wale matter, and something struck me. I listened to his tape over and over, and I realized that he was putting caveats in the prophecy. Saying that, but if he goes and see a man of God and the man of God prays for him, I saw that. There are caveats in it, which meant that if it didn't come to pass, then he has room to even say that, well, I said, but if he does this, and I'm thinking he did this.
The heavily caveated prophecy.
Yeah, so the point I'm making is that if we don't clearly define or redefine Section 208 and make it more specific, like we've seen with Electronic Communications Act, it is broad and subject to abuse. Now, the people who have been charged with enforcing it interpret it in their own way. Now, those of us who are citizens who are supposed to conduct our lives in such a way that we will not fall foul of the law, we are not able to even tell what kind of conduct is it that when I engage in, it is going to cause an alarm. Paul, we don't know what is it that you can say right now that police can say has caused an alarm. And has caused an alarm to who? We say the public. And the public can be even two people. They can even say because two people were afraid, you've caused fear and alarm, and you can't be charged.